Dun, 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 dun. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another Buffalo Sports Center video. I am Don. With me today is Cal, and today we are going to talk about some potential forward targets for the Buffalo Sabres this offseason. We've done goaltenders, we've done defenders. Let's finish this series off with some forwards. Cal, what do you think the Sabres should be looking at heading into this offseason?
Heading into this offseason, we mentioned, they definitely need a goalie, definitely need, a little help in the defensive room, but forwards is what's really going to make or break this offseason. As we've seen the last couple of years, the Sabres have had maybe one or two lines that have clicked, but that, 3 and 4 line, they just haven't been there. The Sabres definitely need to bulk up and stack up on their forwards. And one way to do it would be signing some free agents in this offseason.
Absolutely. They need to get some fresh blood because Cody Eakin as your fourth line center is your bottom line player option. Just not really good. I like John Hayden, though. He was pretty solid. And one interesting thing before we get into it is that there's not a lot of spots to go around in the forward group, surprisingly enough. I think there's only 3 or 4, and you have to assume that Jack Quinn and JJ Peterka are going to be vying for 2 of those spots. So really, the Sabres need to add probably another top 6 winger and maybe probably 2 top 6 wingers when you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, if you're trying to go to the playoffs this next season, which I think me and you both agree they are, they're trying to, at least trying to make that, the bubble, trying to make the playoffs, take that next step. You're trying to do that. You got to for sure get a top 6 forward and potentially, quite a few, lower line guys. But as you mentioned, there's not a lot of room, so you're going to have to choose between some of your guys that you already have and some new guys.
Absolutely. Let's get into our first option here. And this guy's been a target for a number of teams. And this is Minnesota Wild left winger Kevin Fiala. He had 85 points in 82 games, and 33 of which were goals. He had an absolutely phenomenal year on the Wild's second line. And sometimes he came with Kirill Kaprizov. What do you think about adding a guy like Fiala?
Yeah, this guy averaged over a point a game last season. I mean, this guy could really, take this team to a new level. Not a big name around the media though. If you're just a generic hockey fan, but if you know what you're talking about and followed the NHL last season, Fiala would be a great option for this team. I think it's going to be tricky to get him. I'm not going to lie. That's going to be the situation with a lot of these players. Who wants to come to the Sabres, right? We've been asking that for years and years and years. Finally, I think the culture change is getting there. So if you get a guy like Fiala, in this mix, you can definitely transition your team.
Absolutely, and he is going to be an RFA this offseason, much like Victor Olofsson. And Minnesota, looking at their cap space, they don't have a ton of it. They have about $7 million left in cap space, and they have about 5 players to re-sign. And you are bound to assume that Fiala wants a big raise after only getting $3 million last year. I think his price range will be anywhere from 8 million really, but it's warranted. His point totals have been very good over the last couple of seasons. He had 85 points this season. He had 40 in 54 games last season. He's been very consistent. Not quite that point per game player, but this was his breakout season. He would be a phenomenal addition to the Sabres locker room.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, for anyone complaining about, maybe some bad contracts that we're going to talk about in this video, or people who, we might have to overpay for, just take a look at the situation the Sabres are in. If they re-signed every single RFA and, signed most of the guys, they would still be $10 million under the cap floor. So they seriously have to make some big money just to get to the floor. So I don't want to hear anything from Sabres fans about overpaying, bad contracts. I understand, a horrible contract, but we're trying to get to the playoffs. We're trying to grow this team. We're going to have to pay some big money for some big guys.
Yeah, and Fiala would certainly be a huge addition to the Sabres forward core. Bills are on my mind. I don't know why. But let's move on to our second target here, and I have highlighted New York Rangers center Ryan Strohm. He's got 54 points in 74 games. Almost got those two mixed up. He just made $4.5 million this last season, and he will be an unrestricted free agent this offseason. Cal, how would you feel about potentially adding a veteran center like Strohm?
This would be another guy which I'd honestly love to have. I think he'd bring some leadership to the team. He definitely has experience. And our current, center position, we don't really have a guy who's great at faceoffs. And Ryan Strohm, he's somewhere like in between. He's not like an expert at faceoffs or anything like that, but he definitely bring that veteran experience, and he would know what he's doing, in the center of the ice, unlike some other guys we have on the team. Looking at our current situation, Cody Eakin was our best faceoff guy, and that was the only thing he was good at. So replacing a guy like that, for maybe another guy who's pretty good at faceoffs, put him on maybe the second, third line. That would be a phenomenal upgrade. So I'm always looking to get a center.
And you're right on everything. And there are some Sabres fans watching this video that are going to say, well, wait a minute. We have Dylan Cousins. We have Casey Middlestat, Tage Thompson. Those should be our top 3 centers, right? Well, not quite, because while Tage Thompson was a through-and-through center last season, we did see Cousins and Middlestat take turns at center and winger with varying degrees of success. We also saw Peyton Krebs. He's also listed as a center on the Sabres roster, but he didn't play that position. He was more of a winger last season. I think that getting Strohm and putting him in between Cousins and Krebs would be phenomenal, not only because he's a veteran, but because he's also now having playoff experience with the New York Rangers this season.
Yeah, a lot of fans got to remember, every single talented kid coming up through the systems is most likely a center. So, the Sabres have been in this sticky situation recently where they've had a bunch of young players on their team who, haven't had to really fight for positioning because the team's been so bad. So these guys come up like Cousins, Middlestat, they're going to play center, but, you think maybe a more talented team like, say, Colorado or like St. Louis, you look at like the Capitals, you bring a young guy in like that, they're probably not going to be playing center their first few years because they're going to get pushed aside in order to fill room.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ryan Strohm would be a great addition on the Sabres' second line behind Thompson. He would really add some good, consistent game to the top 6 because while the Sabres did have a lot of success last season, a lot of their scoring did still come from that first line, and we've seen that problem time and time and again. They haven't really had a good backup center behind Jack Eichel or now Tage Thompson, and Ryan Strohm would certainly be the best guy that we have had since Ryan O'Reilly departed.
Definitely. I completely agree with that. Definitely got to get another center.
Yes, absolutely. Let's move on now to our third option here, and I've also gotten Jake Debrusk, another winger. He's from Boston. We all know that. We've seen him plenty of times kill the Sabres, and I think it would be a really intriguing addition to the Sabres forward core. He's another left winger. He had 25 goals and 42 points in 77 games last season. He just signed a new contract, but there are still rumblings that the Bruins may try to trade him. You notice they only gave him $4 million a year, and that is very appealing, and they could use him as trade bait, especially as Boston enters their new transitional period.
Yeah, Jake Debrusk is an interesting option for the Sabres. Like you said, we'd have to trade for him, so I don't know if you want to get into that, but there's a lot of things we could trade. I know we got a lot of first round picks this year. We got a lot of second, a lot of late round picks, ton of draft capital.
Just everywhere.
you can really look at our trade options, many different ways. But overall, as a player, I think he's an interesting option. Could definitely get a better opportunity on a Sabres team than a Bruins team. Coming into a team with less talent, I think he'd put up more than 42 points on the Sabres, honestly, if he plays, on our second line. So I definitely think this could be an option if you can, do a solid trade. Again, I'm not looking for the perfect trade, not looking for perfect contracts, even though this would be cheap. I'm just looking to make the playoffs.
Absolutely. And Jake Debrusk, he knows how to get there. And he really did. After all of that contract chatter and the trade bait stuff, he did come alive this past season with the Bruins and gave them a little more depth scoring, something that team has desperately needed. And unfortunately for them, he kind of disappeared in the playoffs in the first round there. But he would be a smart addition, I think, a very under-the-radar, low-key, and he's a poor man's Kevin Fiala, in my opinion. Very physical, speedy still, and he's a good second, maybe third line winger, even though Kevin Fiala is definitely a top 2-line winger.
Yeah, like we said, on a Sabres roster that we have no idea what it's going to look like next season. A lot of these guys we bring in are going to get huge opportunities to make their stance on the Sabres team, and if they can make a bigger stance than they did on their previous teams, get this big opportunity with, emerging head coach Don Granato, who seems to be a player's coach, you never know what could happen.
Yeah, you'd never know. And I think all three of these options would be very good. But let's move on now to our fourth and final option here. And I think that Max Domey, a guy with a little bit of feistiness and a little bit of pop who can still score, would be a fantastic addition, very good character addition to the Sabres forward group. He had 39 points, 11 of which were goals, when during his time with the Blue Jackets and Hurricanes this past season. He played in 72 regular season games, and I think would be great as another maybe left winger. You can also play right winger as well. If you guys notice, we are definitely targeting wingers at forwards this offseason. Cal, how do you think this guy would turn out with the Sabres?
Let's start out by saying this. When is the last time the Sabres have had a forward who's been, chippy, just goes after people? You could say maybe, Johan Larsson or someone behind there. But last season, we saw many instances when the Sabres would just, kind of take hits. They take cheap shots. We saw a few with Dahlin. And then Dahlin would even have to stick up for himself. Cousins would have to stick up for himself. We need a guy like Max Domey who can, be a presence out there, not, a goon, not a fighter, but somebody who's willing to stick up for his teammates. So that would be, a very solid option, and he can put up points too. He's not going to be a John Scott or something who's skating around there just to fight. He's clearly, a hockey player. He's not a Rob Ray. He's a hockey player with a little bit of, feistiness to him.
Yeah.
With that being said, though, I've heard that his name come up year after year after year. Maybe Sabres acquire him. I heard a lot of Jack Eichel potential trade rumors with Max Domey in them before Eichel ended up getting traded to Vegas, but.
Boo.
Yeah, I think this could definitely be a possibility. I wouldn't have him in my top top three for sure, but definitely a possibility to make the team better.
Yeah, I think he would be very good on the Sabres' third line, either or on which side of the center there. We still don't know who that would be, but I like Max Domey, even though he's not as flashy. He didn't necessarily have a great season with the Blue Jackets, though when he did come to Carolina, he just totally switched it. He turned on a new part of his game. And I'm not sure necessarily if he wants to come from a contender like Carolina to Buffalo, who are still not even close, I'd say, to the playoffs yet. But it's certainly something to consider. He's currently making $5.3 million. I'm not sure you'd want to continue paying him that level of money, especially as being maybe a third-line winger. Maybe $4 million, $3 million, something around there. But anyways, I'm getting off track here, but Domey I think would be a good addition, a good depth option for the Sabres. And yeah, I think that's it. So, ladies and gentlemen, you just saw 4 potential forward options for the Sabres this offseason. I was Don, this was Cal. Tell us in the comment section, who do you think the Sabres should go after this offseason? Thank you guys so much for watching, and see y'all in the next video. Peace.